Welcome to the New Masculine Podcast. This is a place where masculine identifying people come together in community to disrupt outdated models of masculinity and together construct new models for our way forward as men. As a special note, while this conversation is between men, this podcast values all beings and seeks to create positive impacts for all. I'm your host, Travis Stock. I am a master life coach, an equus coach, which means I often partner with horses when supporting clients, and I'm a teacher. In my coaching work, I am passionate about the balance of masculine and feminine energies in each of us, regardless of gender. I seek to help others nurture a relationship with both types of energy, which often leads to a greater sense of wholeness. And yet what I found in my work with men is that many of us have been taught messages about what it means to be a man by first teaching us to avoid anything that is associated with the feminine. That avoidance leads to few experiences of intimacy, emotions outside of anger, vulnerability, or even a sense of belonging. Striving to comply with these models of masculinity has many of us feeling isolated, ashamed, unworthy, afraid, angry, and depressed. That's why I started this podcast, to bring men together who are ready for something new, something more whole. My next guest plays in worlds that can appear magical and deeply rooted in the spiritual. Ian Jin Yap shares his brand of healing magic as a hedge witch, storyteller, and as a facilitator, specifically working with clients who experience anxiety and want support moving on from difficult life experiences. As a person, Jin describes himself as a spiritual being, an artist, and as a student. Growing up and living in Malaysia plays a big role in shaping his views on masculinity. Hearing how culture impacts our understanding of masculinity is a big part of why I wanted him to share his stories. We met through the world of coaching and self-help, and I instantly knew this was a solid human being. I'm grateful to have Jin infuse some of his magic into the New Masculine conversation. Welcome, Jin.
Good evening, Travis. Hey, everybody.
I'm so glad to have you here. Is there anything else I didn't capture in there that you'd like to share about yourself?
You got most of it. But yeah, I would love to add on that I really enjoy being a spiritual facilitator to help people remember who they are as well. And it's something that I do almost every day. And but apart from that, you really got everything.
I love it. That's who I am. It's a bit thorough.
Yeah, very thorough.
Well, and as you were saying, good evening. It is evening for me, but it's also morning for you. We're through the magic of the internet. You are in Malaysia, and it's like 10:45 in the morning there, and it's 6:45 p.m. here.
Yeah.
So you might hear, people listening might hear some of the audio quality differences, but that's just because the magic of technology is helpful and also has its limitations.
Yeah, like you said it.
Yeah. So, Jen, I'm really interested to hear, what are some of the stories you learned about masculinity growing up?
Mm. So before I get into that, I'll talk a little bit about during the time when I was born. Malaysia was just sort of coming out from the World War or the Japanese occupation. So with that, a lot of the men were either very, very rough and gruff, or very, very ambitious, or they were shut down. So to with regards to your question, when learning about masculinity, uh, my past was filled with these two camps of men. It was so interesting to watch and learn as I was growing up. And in my family, there was almost two different camps of males. One was my oldest uncle, and he was a really successful businessman. He went from poverty straight to being very, very rich, very, very successful. And so when I was growing up watching him, I felt like part of being a man was all about being fearless, rough and gruff. He doesn't cry. He's not into the arts or the creative field. Um, and watching my uncle move across the world, he was so uh, loud and charismatic, and and able to just really call the shots and make decisions. And at the same time, being a man was also very difficult because my father, I felt he was very oppressed, repressed by the idea of being a male. My father was much more kind, and he was, I guess you would say, more quiet and more introverted. And the way he would walk around the world or present himself to the world was a lot more quiet and a lot more connective. And at the same time, there was a culture in 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 being Hakka. I'm from a tribe of people known as the Hakka, and we're a dialect in China. And for Hakka people, we're largely more matriarchal. So what happens is you have these two types of males moving across the world, and you have the females, the ladies of the tribe, coming out and really either berating their husbands or overpraising their husbands if they made a lot of money, if they are rough and gruff, if they are uh, successful, they would be praised. They would be um, the prize of the tribe. But if you're more quiet, if you are more gentle or introverted, you're not, let's say, performing. You're not earning the money that is necessary. You're not bringing in the bacon, as you say in the States. Um, you would be ostracized or you would be castrated, quite frankly. So in my psyche, I felt this pull between the two. And this was not so much in my family, but sometimes there would be parties and we would see many men who are either associates of my uncle or my dad, and they are very drunk. you know, they would drink so much, and they would just talk a lot of um, excuse the language, crap. And 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 it's like being a man, you have to be so rough and just so hardy, and you cannot make a mistake, and if you do, you just keep going. And sometimes I almost feel as if like there are no consequences to a man's actions, quite frankly, because a lot of them were either drinking, they were fooling around, and so I didn't have a very good impression of being male.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, I can understand how a lot of that created such a push pull for you growing up as a child, internalizing very mixed signals about what it was to be a man and what successful manhood was, having the loud, boisterous, gruff version demonstrated to you, but also the kind, sensitive, connective type. I mean, in many
yeah,
ways, in US cultures, I think some of the ways you describe your father sound more like they resonate with more feminine energy, connective, kindness, collaborative, quiet, not female, but just sort of more of the energetics of feminine. And to then have come from a family lineage that has more of a matriarchal society, there's just so many interesting messages I hear in all of that that I can imagine led to a lot of you needing to sort through things.
absolutely. I was so confused. And you know, I'm quite introverted myself. I think I take from my father. And on top of that, I had something that we would associate with the feminine energies more, which is I had a lot of creative energy. And being a kid who is a little bit more sensitive, who who is empathetic, who I'm not perfect. I'm sure I could I I was a little brat from every now and then. But at the same time, being that type of child, I didn't know how to navigate the world. In fact, my creativity actually got me into a lot of trouble when I was trying to connect with my cousins or friends. A lot of these other guys could not understand because they did not react or treat women like the the rough and gruff. I didn't think of um, my female friends as objects or something to own. you know, I they were really really like my friends, because I guess growing up around my sisters, my mom, I felt differently about that. Yeah,
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think
yeah,
that's you and I are very similar in that
yeah.
I was befriending most of the girls in my life as a little boy, and I was wanting to find I what I valued personally was sort of relationships that were built on sharing and doing little activities together and being kind with each other, not necessarily some of the rougher gruff stuff that boys were doing. I made myself do some of those things in order to fit in, but I think I was very similar to you in that I looked at my relationships with females as like the safe place for me to just be myself
Oh
and
yeah.
value what I value.
Oh yeah, totally. And it was so funny because like you, I also tried to perform that type of masculinity. It didn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me neither.
Yeah, it didn't work. And after a while I just reverted back to who I was, and it was hilarious. Like I have, this is a fun story. I When I was growing up, I I like to, as a kid, I mean, it's adorable in my mind now, but at that time it wasn't. I was very fascinated with folklore, and I was very drawn to fairies, and I started to draw a lot of fairies. And I remember my male cousins and my sisters was like, ugh, like, what's wrong with this one? I was just like drawing and I kept playing around with it, and they thought I was weird, and it was hilarious now. I mean, now looking back, but at that time as a child, I remember being very embarrassed, and I would hide my fairy drawings and things like that. So yeah,
It's amazing how sometimes even like the people around us, how we quickly find out the things that we're interested in or the things that might traditionally be more feminine than masculine, how we quickly start to realize from the feedback from others that we are doing something we shouldn't be doing or doing something we should be hiding. And all you're doing is drawing, and yet you quickly learn, oh wow, I need to hide that away, or I need to keep that from people's eyes so that I don't get rejected or I don't belong in some way.
oh yeah, totally. And that's when I started to modify my behavior, which is not a good thing. And yeah,
Yeah, I
really.
totally resonate with that, as I remember
Mm.
my 20s mostly feeling like depression because I had tried modifying my feelings so much that I just got lost and locked up and really stuck. So I really hear that. When you were presenting or trying to be the traditional masculinity that you had sort of absorbed as a child, who did you tend to model after? More of that, the side that your uncle demonstrated, the more like successful businessman, the gruff person, the
Mhm.
loud, boisterous type, or the more
Yeah.
introverted, shut down, quiet version that you described in your father?
Yeah, I was definitely trying to become more rough and gruff, and I started to swear a lot. I swore like a sailor. So there was, because I associated the male with that. Hakkas are known to be very rude, because our language is very harsh, and we have a lot of swear words. So I tried that, and the other thing that I would do was to start trying to maybe work out, trying to present myself as a stronger male. And of course, that didn't work because I didn't like sports. I'm not competitive. I don't like to, yeah, I don't like to. So at that time, I remember I was trying to perform with sports in high school, and there we were playing rugby, and I was trying to do it, and what happened was I ended up flying in the air and landing on my sacrum, and I had a spine injury. My spine was never the same ever
Oh
since then, and
gosh.
I was like, okay, I'm not going to do that again. The price is this.
Last time I try to
Yeah,
live that
last
way.
time I tried to live that way, and it was hilarious because one more thing that I did. This is sad. it's also quite funny. One of the things that happened was when I was 17, I got to participate in a novitiate program, so I could be a novice monk for 2 months. Excuse me, 2 weeks. It's 2 weeks, and so when I was a novice monk for 2 weeks, one of the things that I learned was the forest monk would drink their own pee as a form of medicine. And they would use that when they're in the jungle because, when you're deep in the jungle, you have no access to medicine or doctors. So pee was medicine. And it's like you get your hormones there and it's excess hormones and things like that. So in my mind, I was like, well, maybe if I drink my pee, I would become more masculine, more manly.
Oh
And
my goodness, the
yeah,
lengths you're
I
willing to
really, I really
go.
did everything, and I actually drank for a while. And after a while, I'm like, nothing changed. I'm still someone who likes to draw, and I like music, and all the things that I was denying myself, all my creativity, my love for music, my love for spirituality, and I was like, oh my god, it's not going away. I
The
yeah,
pee
the pee
won't
won't
heal
heal
me.
me. And I was like, what is wrong with you? And then, anyways, yeah, that was some of the fun stories that happened throughout, just trying to fit in, trying to become more masculine, more male, and um, it was fun. It's fun now, but looking back, it was like, oh man, what did I put myself through?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm glad to know that there have been other types of medicine for you
Yeah,
other than your
totally.
own.
Yeah, totally. It's self-acceptance. They should sell that and bottle that.
That's fascinating what some
Yeah.
self-acceptance can do. So I hear that your journey has evolved into more self-acceptance, and that you're allow yourself to be interested in the things that you're interested in, and to draw and to be creative and all of that kind of thing. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey to get there? Like, how did you transform from the what you thought you needed to be into who you're allowing yourself to be
Yeah.
now?
So I had to go to spiritual recovery very early in my life. Without revealing too much details, basically my background had a lot of violence and turbulence. And at the same time, it was peculiar because, again, that thing with mixed signals. I had a lot of blessings. I had a lot of opportunities to go to great schools, and um, uh, m- m- I was well fed. I had a good life, but the violence was a very big part. And because of that, and because of this lack of self acceptance, I had to go into spiritual recovery. And by chance, I met my spiritual director, my teacher, my I call her mom, Diana. She runs Anchoring the Light Ministry, and I had to enter into recovery. And she taught me the 12 steps. She taught me the Course in Miracles and quite a bit of mysticism. And that was my vehicle to begin self acceptance. It was quite a journey and very, very difficult. And because of the spinal injury, my body was in shock. I started to develop like almost like manic depression, 5 years later, and it started to get really bad. So at that period of time, I would be crying at 3 or 4 a.m. and uh, I would have mood swings that are pretty insane. So a lot of the traumatic symptoms were starting to rise to the surface and exhibit in a way that was destructive in my life. So that was the time when I started spiritual recovery. And when I went through the process, it was not the sweetest process because, as we all know, for me at least, when you enter something that is like a genuine spiritual recovery program or any form of really good depth psychology work, you really have to break through your ego or your personality. It's almost like you have to dissolute it. You have to burn it down. And I was going through that process with her, and I was really, I had to take a deep look into myself and begin to come face to face with how much I was really cutting myself out from being who I am. And it didn't happen right away. It took me 12 years to recover to a sense of normalcy. And it was during the last years of the 12th year, around that time, I was having a conversation with my teacher. Um, she, when we were talking, I told her that, I feel so um, uncomfortable with who I am. I really think that what I have is worthless because it's not bringing in money. It's uh, trying it's almost like I was trying to become my uncle. I was like, I'm not making a lot of money, and it's not like I'm selling paintings that are worth like ten thousands of dollars, and and as I was talking to her, she looked me in the eye, and she has really beautiful eyes. It's sometimes gray and blue, and it's very piercing. So she would look at me and she would hold her gaze, and she looked at me and she said, "What is wrong with being creative?" And I was like, "What?" Like, how do you respond to that? I mean, everything is wrong with creativity. And she would, yeah, and she was like, "What if your creator gave you these talents? Why would you try to cut them out of you?" And she shared that she had friends, male friends, who were super super creative. She would live with someone at one point, and he would bring her like really gorgeous Easter eggs, and it would cheer her up. And she said, and then she followed that up with the next question. She was looking at me so deeply, and she was like, "Do you have loyalty to your creator?" And that shocked me. I was like, "What does that mean?" And she's like, "You are built a certain way, and there is no other human being like you. Why would you try to be somebody else?" And she has being a very seasoned astrologer, she would share something like, your chart is so unique to a point that it will never repeat for 21,600 years. So that's how unique. Yeah, that's what she said. She said, your chart, your unique identity, your universal unique identity is that unique. You will never repeat again. Why would you do that to yourself? And I was like, I don't know. And I burst into tears. Yeah, like I just had internalized so much self-hate that I wasn't like my uncle, who was successful, who was amazing, who had like lived in a huge mansion, and I really had to sit and think about that. And that is also when she began to help me to redefine masculinity, because it was such a significant session that I didn't realize it changed my life, because she got me to redefine what is being male, and she asked, "What is male to you?" And I gave her the answers that I gave you at the beginning of the interview, which was, oh, he's rough, he's gruff, he can take shit, he doesn't um apologize. He's just just keep going, just keep going. And she was like, "That's not a male." And I was like, "What? That's not a male?" And she said, and she shared that um her husband, who was also my teacher at a different period, was a man of integrity and honor. And she said, "You want to be a male like that. A man is just someone who is loyal to his creator, who is honorable and has integrity. If he says he will do something, he will." And at the same time, she reminded me, it is not about perfection. You're not here to become a perfect being, but you are here to practice and embody the principles of honor and integrity. And that moment really changed my life. I went away dazed from that private session, and I spent a good month just really contemplating on what was a man. A man was a being of honor and integrity, and during the session as well, she mentioned that you have to think about that and go away and practice this. And so I did. I practiced being holding on to my honor, holding on to my integrity. When I said something, I would do it. And at the same time, having the space for mistakes, having the space for um, relapse or whatever. And that changed my life because for for once, I felt a sense of loyalty to who I was. And that was such a gift that she gave me. It was such a huge gem that she said to me, "Why are you not loyal to you? Why are you not loyal to your talents?" And with that, I think it set a great foundation. I could step into my talents a little at a time, and I began to really own that, hey, you know what? You can do this spiritual facilitation. You're not crazy. You can paint. You can put out art. There's nothing wrong with you. There are creative males out there. There are sensitive males out there. It's not just one dimensional.
Oh my goodness. I'm so grateful you shared that story. There's parts of your story that I knew, and there's parts of that that I am hearing for the first time, and just sort of,
Yeah,
it's such a powerful story. And I understand why that one session with your spiritual director kind of shook you in some ways, because it sounds to me like it delineated the old from the new. It's like a real pivot point in your life where the some of the things I heard as you were talking about were sort of the dissolution of ego. But in so many ways, what I've seen is that masculine, like what's touted as masculine or that we celebrate as masculine, can often be very ego driven. And so in some ways you had to do the scariest thing possible, which is to go against that. And the ego hates that. So
totally.
I totally get that that experience was challenging and hard, and not sort of like you're able to talk about it now and wrap it up in a beautiful story. And yet I'm sure there were really dark moments through a lot of it.
Oh, totally, totally.
And I love that you were sharing like that you some of the things that you shifted from were that your worth was sort of attached to whether you could make money or not. I think that's a very traditional thing in masculinity is that our worth is based on what we can do and how much money we can make, our ability to provide.
Oh
Um,
yeah, oh yeah. And in Asia, it's big. If you're not providing for your family, it's almost like you have no honor or integrity. They would just shoot you down as you are a useless male. You are irresponsible. You have kids, and you're not taking care of them. It's really a big thing here, and you can see a lot of men. Um, I guess you can say that they're suffering with mental illness because they're not happy, and they're not at ease with who they are, and sometimes from that there's so much rage and violence that can come from that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for sort of encapsulating that. It's exactly some of the things I see in my culture too in the US is
Mm.
there is a lot of that sort of there's only a couple ways for men to be of value and useful in this in our culture, and it's a very narrow lane, and if you don't fit into that, it causes that dis-ease and that mental health challenges and the depression and the worthlessness and the feeling unmoored and lost
Mm-hmm.
because you don't fit one narrow little lane of what masculinity can be.
Oh
I
yeah.
love in your storytelling the shift that your spiritual director helped you create around loyalty. Like, are you loyal to the stories, loyal to the person you've been trying to be, or are you loyal to who you actually are?
Oh yeah. That was such a powerful session. I can't wait to tell her that I'm doing this interview. So
Oh
because
goodness, I hope
I
she
just want to,
listens.
yeah, I want to tell her how, I mean, like, I'm so grateful for her. She really is my spiritual mother. I call her mom, and
Mm.
she really, really mothered me um, to who I am. And that was, I mean, it's incredible to say that to a young person who is still developing. Like, are you loyal to your creator? Are you loyal to yourself? And I'm like, what? What does that
Yeah, how old were you
mean?
when that happened?
Yeah, it was probably um, let's see. I have a bad sense of time. I would say about 3 to 4 years ago. So I
Mm,
mean, I'm still relatively young, and at that point, and still developing, still not knowing who I am, and trying to fit into old models of being male, and um, yeah, it was big. Yeah, 3 to 4 years back. Yeah, 3 to 4
mm,
years back. Yeah. By then it was probably, yep, around the 12th year of my recovery.
mm.
Yeah. Hmm.
I'm so impressed that you could handle that question and actually take it someplace. I think that
Thank
question
you.
could often fly by people because they're so invested in ego or so invested in the stories of where they've been, not necessarily in who they're becoming or who they were meant to be.
Oh yeah. But it's also because, I was in so much pain, and like the pain could flow to, the different quadrants of life. Like my body, my mind, my spirit was just not healthy. It was in so much pain. I was projecting pain. I was violent. I was I had a lot of rage, and I was suicidal at many points. And it was so difficult to navigate, but because I was in so much pain, I just took whatever that I felt was true and ran with it. And I've always been that type of student with her because, you know, when I was going through recovery, one of the other things that was happening was I was actually forking my own allowance to go to recovery, and I didn't ask for money from my parents, and so I did not always had access to her. So but every time she would lecture or give me a gem, I would run with it. I would practice it, and I would go back to her and tell her about what I learned, what I discovered, and she would help to direct me, and maybe also do some corrections, because sometimes maybe my interpretation or my understanding is a little bit off, and she would just help me to understand it better. And it was such a great way to work, and I think that's why I'm so at home with a lot of the oral cultures of healing. And because that's how they were taught as well. They were given stories, they were given questions, and you had to go away to figure it out. Yeah. So that was it really shaped me to be who I am today.
I'm so glad that kind of learning still exists. I don't think there's very many US traditions that are in line with that. We're so like instant gratification kind of people. Just give it to me. Just fix it. Just give me the pill. Give
Oh
me the that
no.
there's not the
Yeah.
space to sit with the story and let it
Yeah.
develop you and to let it
Oh yeah.
let the blooming process happen.
Oh my goodness. Diana is a tough teacher. She is, and she she held me with excellence. So she was not willing to identify my weakness. So I could not go to her and whine. I mean, if I did, I could, but she would just, let me have it, and grow me to become a
Mm.
man. And I didn't realize that that was what she was doing throughout. Sometimes I was like, oh my God, it's so tough. Why am I doing this to myself? But the freedom that comes from this recovery is, I would I wouldn't change any part of my journey, because the freedom that I feel today, it's not perfect, but it's highly valuable for me. It's precious. You can't buy this type of freedom. Like when you
Yeah.
work so hard to get rid of adulteration, and making sure that, like, no longer modifying your behavior and things like that. The freedom that comes from that is insane. And I don't feel like I'm selling my soul to anything. Yeah.
I think that's super inspiring. It inspires me
Yeah.
to hear you talk about fighting so hard
Yeah.
and like really committing to your life path and what you were created for and
Yeah.
who you actually are.
Yeah.
Um, and I love that you were talking about your teacher and how you could identify with your own insecurities and you in many ways were really practiced at that, feeling worthless and feeling insecure and feeling not enough, and yet she wasn't willing to see you in that in that
Hmm.
way, and that
Yeah.
in many ways, while it wasn't always easy, it was the most healing thing she could do, was to identify you by your strengths and where you're going.
Yeah, and it's shout out to all great spiritual directors and therapists who are willing to take the heat, because she takes a lot of heat. Sometimes there are people who attack her for doing that, and but she's like, nope, you are created by God. You are I mean, we're not talking religion here. This is not about that. But she's always like, you're created in a special way, and nobody can replace you. Why are you playing small? And like, a lot of people would hate her for that, and but I loved it because I think that's how I could recover, because I was just, as you said, so practiced in being worthless and useless. And sometimes, I mean, in all honesty, it still comes up once in a while, but I can navigate through that. I can make choices to get out of that very quickly
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's another place where our stories are similar, and that shame and worthlessness were a big part of was one of the biggest teachers of my life, was to feel shame and that lacking in value for many years, and to continue. It's a continued part of my journey, is to continue untying my relationship to shame, and the way that I use shame to control myself, or to be something that I think is more acceptable or lovable or fits in better.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Oh yeah.
so I love being in the presence with somebody else that's really done their work around that shame piece, because I think it can be really, really, really toxic.
It really can, and you really hit it on the nail. It's really it's tough because I love how the depth psychologist would say that it's an internalized complex. It really feels like I have this evil force inside of me just destroying me from the inside. It's really, really true what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that more men are struggling with that than they either give them permission to self permission to acknowledge, or that they even know what to do with. Like,
Oh,
all of my
mm,
male clients come with some level of shame, because I think when you are I mean, I think in many ways male culture, as you were saying, is rough and gruff, and can be
mhm.
it can be violent sometimes in the way that it uses language,
Oh yeah.
and that violence like quickly lets each one of us know who I am, and like what I really want and what I'm really interested in is not okay. Like you drawing fairies, you
Oh
quickly
yeah.
understood that's not okay. And so that happens so early on from childhood that I think people in general are just really struggling with shame, but I do think there's a strong epidemic of it in male culture and in masculine people,
Mm.
to be ashamed of themselves and to constantly be trying to earn more money, or or demonstrate a level of strength just to be valuable.
Oh yeah. And it's sad to watch it. It happens so much. And the fascinating thing for me as well is when I'm doing counseling or facilitation, I notice a lot of the males, um, they carry a huge level of stress in their bodies to a point that they have to figure out how to fix their relationship, and they don't even get that it's the same energy of the rough and gruff is actually destroying the relationship from the inside, because he's always at war with life. There's always something to fight with for the male, which is very sad. And the other fascinating thing for me is how we society, I see it in many cultures as well, where the deviation from healthy masculine energy is now huge. um, what I found out was a lot of the images that we're using today of what is male is actually not what a male is, because they're male archetypes like the king, like the father. The male in its prime, in its gold, is meant to be a protector or a just ruler or a beneficent man. But somehow it got into the shadow and it became so toxic, and and of course, the shadow of the male masculine energy is predatorial energy. So it's fascinating to see that there in society now there's a lot of predators, a lot of the males. It's almost like they're internalizing this toxic energy and just really they have nowhere to go, and it's so sad to watch. Yeah.
Yeah, you encapsulated that so well to sort of describe how there's sort of that healthy version of masculine and that balanced version. And when pushed to its edges and pushed into shadow, it does
Hmm.
become predatorial. It does exact violence on others. It is power hungry and greedy, and it hoards power, and it takes power from others. So I love how you were just describing that. And I think that sounds so true. And as you were saying,
Hmm.
like it is so prevalent right now in culture. As some of the other episodes that I've recorded, we talk about how much of the Me Too generation has come up and how much predatorial male behavior
Mm.
is being exposed at this time. And I think the way you described it sort of makes sense. Like when you push things into where a man has to always be at war with something, it
Yeah.
inevitably it goes into shadow.
Yeah. And the fascinating thing, one of the greatest teachings that my teacher passed to me, and being woman, it was very fascinating to receive from her. She actually said boys are actually more sensitive than girls.
Mm.
And I was like, how is that possible? But she explained that with girls, there's a type of resiliency that comes with it, because you naturally, for them, their developmental cycle, they can endure a lot. And it's not to say that I want women to endure anything. That's not what I mean. But she said for men, actually, if you were to say to a boy that he is useless or he is bad, it actually can destroy him and has like detrimental effects throughout his life. And you never know that that can cause him to go predatorial. Um, yeah, very, very
Well, that's so
fascinating.
fascinating. I never really
Yeah,
thought of it that way.
yeah,
Like even on a sort of just on a like evolutionarily on a basis that women have evolved to endure more than
yeah,
men have. And
yeah.
that actually that does feel true to me as you were saying like boys are more sensitive. I was like, how is that? But the way you described that just totally makes sense to me.
Yeah, and like I mean, she said it in a joking way, but it does make sense. She's like, yeah, no, when a woman is unhappy, she can go shopping. And she'll be fine after that. But she said it in a funny way, but there is to me, there's some truth to that. But for guys, and she said, where do they go? Where do they go when they can't make that money? They either go to the bar or they go to a hooker.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
and because there's just no place to express. And sometimes, I mean, I don't know, it's sad. And by the way, I hope I'm not disrespecting any professional escorts out there. You are in a very wonderful profession, and I really mean it. So it's like oldest profession in the world, highly respected. Please, yeah. Like
Absolutely.
I yeah. Like
Yeah, but I think I don't sense any disrespect in what you were saying. I see you more acknowledging the isolation that men are really experiencing, and that there aren't really spaces for men to go to deal with the challenges of life. In many
mm,
ways, we're taught as men not to seek help from others, or to lean on a friend, or to be vulnerable, or to even be allowed to feel weak. And so, if you're not allowed to feel those things and you do because life will always make you feel those things, then where do you go? And
mm-hmm,
you turn towards shadow kinds of things and approach things in a shadow kind of way to try to get your needs met. But what if we just actually opened up space for men to be vulnerable and to understand their emotions, and to, as you were saying, some of the things you listed as sound like would be more new masculine types of behavior. They're
mm,
in integrity, they have honor, they're loyal, and choosing what they're loyal to, not just choosing to be loyal to a story or a wound or a traumatic event in their life or what they think they need to be, but actually loyal to who they really are.
oh yeah, totally.
Are there other pieces that, other words you would put to how you see balanced masculine, or what I'm calling the new masculine?
Mm. One of the things that Diana has always talked to me about was how we're not here to play house, and which is like the common thing growing up in, especially in an Asian society. It's all about, you get married, you have kids, and things like that. She said, you're not here to play house. You are here to really embody your soul and to really, really live from that place, live your genius. And for me, I think the new masculine is very much like that, where it's to break out from conventional roles that society has put into us, and to be someone who is embodying who they are. And I don't mean that, I'm not saying that everyone should go out there and be a bum and like start surfing or whatever, just in case some of them are like, they have like a strong inner surfer. That's not what I mean. But one of the things that I think we tripped up on as a society is that following your destiny doesn't always mean success. It doesn't always mean having a lot of money. And sometimes following your destiny is really, really rough. And I'm just thinking about Van Gogh. And this is what I've learned, that is so in line with the new masculine. Van Gogh didn't always had money to eat, but somehow there was always a canvas. And so for me, when I heard Diana said that to me, I realized that I mean, the new masculine for me should be embodying their soul. If you came here to be if you're a certain being, you have a creative being, or you have a mathematical being, or an engine, go for it 100%. And don't measure yourself up to success or money. And piggybacking on Van Gogh, he was not recognized as successful or whatever when he was alive, but he left a legacy of paintings that shifted the the culture. It really enriched the culture in a huge way. And without him, we won't have Starry Starry Night or Scream. And um, so for me, that is the new masculine, to follow your destiny, um, regardless. It's not about the money. It's not about playing house. It's about a person just really embodying themselves. Yeah, I hope that's not too long-winded.
No, not at all. Thank you
Yeah,
so much for helping. I've never put it in, like, been able to synthesize it the way that you did. I love that you said that, living your destiny does not always mean success in sort of those traditional ways, like financial well-being and financial success.
yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't always feel blissful
Oh,
to live in your
yeah,
destiny. And I love that you
totally.
just said that you can be living in your destiny, and it doesn't have to make sense to some of the traditional ways that we are now looking at success.
And I mean, the story goes, Van Gogh cut off his ear. I mean, come on,
Yeah,
like,
my understanding is there's some
like,
mental health issues
yeah,
there.
yeah, some mental health issues there. I mean, and he wasn't happy throughout, but but somehow when you're following your destiny, there's a sense of like the new masculine is not betraying himself just because he wants to be accepted, be loved, and whatever. And I really feel for the culture. Like if you hide that part of you, any of you, I mean, the listeners out there, anyone, if you hide that part of you, the culture is poorer without you. it's so it's so
So true.
sad. It's so
It's
sad.
so true.
Yeah, we have a lot of geniuses in the world, and I'm sure you feel this way too, Travis. When you're counseling or you're working with people, you can spot the genius in them, but the shame is just like burying it like 6 feet under. And it's really like you have to like dig through it and go, okay, no, like ignore that, no, this is it, this is like, come here. Like,
It's so true.
yeah, you don't sell this part of you. No, this is gold. And they'll be like, this is gold, are you sure? Like, yeah.
Yeah. So I love that you're saying that the new masculine is about not betraying yourself. And I want to know, do you have any sort of practices that you do in your own life to continue keeping yourself on this track versus the track you were on? I think you had said in recovery there is relapse, and in there are moments where the shame returns. What are the sort of practices you use to keep yourself from betraying yourself?
Mm. The number one thing I work with, because I'm a student of the Course in Miracles, one of the biggest lessons in the course is forgiveness. So, but it's not a forgiveness to destroy, meaning you come from a place of shame, or you come from a place of I forgive you because I know better now. It's not like that. Forgiveness is a very genuine process that is personal, that takes time, and it's highly individual. So for me, the practices that I do daily is I would, number one, listen to my intuition every day, uh, and to pay attention to the inner promptings that I get from my intuition. And I pay special attention to what repeats. Like, for example, if I hear clean your room more than 10 times, I know that it's my intuition talking. And for me, the way I practice in honor and integrity for myself is to honor that voice. And so to make sure that I clean my room, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It's not about perfection. It's just whether or not I end up doing it, whether or not I kept my word. And when I do, there's always a return of energy, or return of investment. I feel this sense of achievement. I feel this sense of self-esteem. And that for me is what I do. And if I fail, I will pull in the forgiveness right away. And and so for me, this exercise, I give this a lot to everybody, and this is actually my own exercise. And whoever comes for counseling, if they're male, I would actually give them this exercise, because I find that it really helps people trust their own instincts. And the goal is that for me, is one of the greatest jewels that I can give anybody, if they want it, is please listen to your own intuition. Don't ignore that, and don't get adulterated. Don't listen to what people say, even if that person's a coach or whatever. That's how Diana trained me, actually. She said, listen to what is happening inside of you. Don't believe in everything that I say. Contemplate. Contemplate before you take it on as a truth. So, yeah, that's what I do.
Genius. I love
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah.
I love that I had two things I wanted to pull you out on, is your daily practice, and then one piece of advice or an offering you would give to men, and you got both of them in one answer.
Yay.
Are there are there any other offerings you would like to of advice or invitations that you would like to give to men who are listening to this podcast about how to do the work of transformation?
Take your time. Take your time. And there's nowhere to go. There's nothing to be, nowhere to go. It's more of a process of listening and following the inner promptings. It really is like a bit like Hansel and Gretel, where you're following breadcrumbs. You don't know where you're going. You meet the witch, and she tries to eat you, but the witch is a symbol of transformation. So with that, for me, is don't run away from the dross of your life. Don't run away from the pain of your life. Work with it, and but throughout the way, know that you're guided. And one of my favorite teachings is that you are always guided right down to you picking potatoes. So yeah, and Carolyn May said this. She said, "Do you the angels are really guiding you," and I really like that image. Whether you believe in angels or not, it doesn't matter. But it's to know that you're guided. Listen, ask for guidance. Stop. Don't rush, and don't run from the pain. The pain has so much gold in it, and it would set you free. Yeah, that would be my advice.
Oh, you are
Yeah.
such a magical being.
Thank you, thank you.
So glad that you brought yourself to this conversation, and that you were willing to share your story so vulnerably of your journey through that. As we've been talking, you've sort of alluded to some of the work that you're doing in the world in terms of your all of the work that you're doing. And so if people would like to find out more about you or would like to connect with you about some of that, how can they
Mm-hmm.
do that?
Okay. My handle on Instagram, the professional page is Ian Jin Yap, IANJINYAP. You can find me on Insta, and it's the page is new, people. So like, I just got up from a marketing class. It's still brand new, so bear with me. More content will be coming, and you can look for Pause and Play by Ian Jin Yap. Pause, as in hit the pause button, and play on Facebook, and you can follow me on there. I do archetypal consultancy, spiritual facilitation, and I also have some traditional healing tools in my toolbox. And yeah, it's just really guiding people back to the magic of life. And if you're into that type of thing, please feel free to hit me up.
Yeah. Can you give us one or two sentences just about what that pause and play is?
Sure. Pause and play is I I I call my work pause and play because I really want people to just slow down. When you follow a transformational journey, what they don't tell you is that the path is long and, and sometimes full of shit, and it winds around a lot. So it's really important that when you're walking your life's journey to just pause and play, because it's in the play that you will get your answers, and just play around with the environment, change something up, and um, sometimes a nice transpersonal experience can come by and help you shift and move towards your destiny a lot quicker. So pause and play is like a little place that I'm trying to create to help people to have this resource for themselves. Yeah, I hope that's not too cryptic.
Not at
So,
all.
yay!
I think there are so many
Yeah.
people out there that need both reminders to pause and reminders to play, and
Yeah.
the recognition that that's where the magic is, and that's where
Mm.
the intuition comes in, as you were saying before, and that's where the real listening can happen.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
love it. I super
Yay.
encourage people to reach out to him, even if you're in the United States or any other country. Jin is doing remote sessions and working with people now, not just in Malaysia.
Mhm.
So please do get in contact with him. I think he has a lot to offer the world, and I'm super excited to be bringing his voice into this conversation and to be kind of lifting up another person's voice that is a part of the transformation and a part of the healing. So thank you for being a part of this, Jen.
Thank you, Travis, and thank you everyone listening.
If anybody wants to get in contact with me, you can find me on Instagram at Travers03. Again, that's TRAVERS03. You can contact me directly at my email address at travisstock03@gmail.com, or you can find me on my website at travisstock.com. I look forward to the next conversation where we'll be continuing to deepen our relationship to the new masculine. Thank you, Jen, for being a part of this episode.
Thank you.